All right, so here we are in 2025. I've talked to a number of GOP offices, and I've kind of surfaced this. And I think this is the appropriate time to talk about this. I've surfaced an issue where here we are, 2025. It's an off year, as they refer to it, and that term always bothered me because it means that people think that we're off this year. And a frustration I've had for a number of years is that it seems like the party doesn't do enough with a long-term strategy. There's a lot of short-term strategies. I know it's resource allocation, but short-term strategies meaning we just got to prepare for the next election and that's it. But I think that there's things that we can and should do in areas of town or these different communities or these different districts where we need to have a long-term strategy to actually have an impact and not just write them off. So I wrote this article last week. Says how Republicans can build bridges and Democrat strongholds. And I want to begin this conversation. This is probably just the first installment of many. My guest today is Willie J. Montague. I interviewed you, Willie, when you ran for Congress last year and you won the primary. We spoke then, and that was in Florida, in Central Florida in August. Then you had September and October, and then the November election with the general election. And I remember seeing a number of your posts where you seemed a little bit frustrated about the party. Were they helping? Were people sending volunteers? What's going on? Where is everybody? Rally the troops. And that really dawned on me then. And our dear friend, Belinda, I talked to her as well about the same issue. Let me introduce you, Willie, if you don't mind, then we're going to get right into this. Willie is an entrepreneur, spiritual leader, influential figure in the community service as well as politics. Is the founder and president of the House of Timothy, which I definitely want to talk about. It's a residential program in Orlando, Florida. He provides transformative support to young men aged 13 to 17. His dedication to personal development and community empowerment has earned him accolades, including an honorary doctorate in humanities and a PhD in religious studies. That's one major facet for this conversation because of your community involvement and helping these communities, especially the youth 13 to 17. In addition, the other half, if you will, if you can put it in a half, Dr. Montague plays a prominent role in political and civic life, serving as chairman of the Orange County Republican Liberty Caucus and regional director for the Central Florida Republican Liberty Caucus. Additionally, you lead Gravity Church in Orlando, and you serve as a CEO of Vivify Holdings. So your commitment to conservative values is further reflected in your role as state chair for the Frederick Douglass Republican Liberty Caucus. So you've got the community involvement, which you've been doing for a while. You've got the political side, which I think makes you perfect to have this conversation, at least this first installment of what should be many conversations that the GOP needs to have. Willie, thanks for joining me today for the conversation.
Thank you, Jess, for having me. I'm excited about it. I know it's going to be detailed, and
Yeah.
I pray this will be something that people will take forward and do something different.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, in the outset, I said, a lot of GOP offices have this short-term view of what they need to do next, and they focus and they've got the resources and to get out the vote and this kind of thing. 20 some years ago, when I was president of the Orange County Young Republicans, and even before that, the treasurer and then just a volunteer, there were certain things that we did in the off year. And I've always been bothered by that term, in the off year, to plant seeds in different communities. And I don't know if they're really doing that a lot, but you expressed some frustration last year before the general election about where's the party? Where's everybody at? Before I get into a lot of details, I do want to go high level and then land in, but tell me a little bit about the experiences that you had.
Well, we can start with experiences back before the primary election. So, Florida is a late term, if you want to say,
Late,
primary. We're one of
right.
the last states to have a primary.
Mhm.
Most have theirs in March, April. So, with us having our primary in August, it only gives us only something like maybe 70 plus days to be able to get to the general. And so, what happened in that process is there were so many people saying, listen, Willie has ran for the seat before. We need everybody to get behind Willie. The party needs the support from the state to the county. Everybody needs to get involved. They initially were like, hey, Willie's the guy. And then it started being the same rhetoric that we hear before, which is let's just wait till the primary is over. Well, that was when essentially the nail was driven in the coffin, because once you do that, pretty much everybody is buying for the same dollars when it gets to the general. And
Mhm.
so the issue really began back during the primary, where we were waiting for those promises to come to pass. And they did not. So many people who were contacting me within the party and around, suggested they did not think that I was going to be able to pull through on the primary. So they backed up. Well, that was the issue because we grassrooted it. We did not have the big time dollars. We did not have 20,000 signs around. We didn't have billboards or even a mailer campaign. We had to do grassroots initiative. So that was part of the problem. And I'll let
Yeah.
you, have any question. That was part of the major problem. Step
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah, to jump in there, from the party standpoint, I think a lot of times it is, "Hey, this is the primary, the people are gonna decide, the party itself, the structure, the team, whatever, they're not gonna provide resources in the primary, let the people decide." And you're right, because it's a late primary, by the time they do get involved, if they get involved, it's it's because that's October or August, 20 something or whatever it is, 24th, whatever the
Yeah.
primary date was. And so then you've got September, October, basically. And so it's kind of late. But the party would say, and everybody in the party would say, well, it's the primary, the people decide, we're not going to provide resources. Even though you're saying some people, supported you or didn't or whatever. But once they decided, then it's kind of late. And the district that you're talking about, and this is the same, this isn't a Willie problem. This is a problem everywhere where here it is, it's a D plus crazy number district. And by the time it comes for the general election with 2 months left, they're like, it's resource allocation. We're not going to allocate resources to a D plus crazy district. We're going to help where we can, where we think we can make a difference. And so therefore you kind of felt like, man, where's the plan here? And so that's when I even talked to BB. I said, I don't know if you can be mad at the party for not doing things the last couple of months, but the fact that they don't have a long-term strategy to have an impact in some, and I'm not saying Orange County. I don't know if they have a long-term strategy or not. I'm not repping on Orange County, but I know that this is a problem everywhere, even where I am locally. The question is, what is the plan long term to make an impact in a D plus crazy number district? And that's not just congressional district, but it could be an area of your county. There's an area of town that are they writing it off? Do they not have a plan? So that's what I wanted to dig into, is what is the long-term strategy? What can we actually do?
That's a good question. Back about now and probably almost 3 years ago or two. So we had a conversation with party leadership. It was myself and other like Republicans that sat down and the conversation was how do we start now today doing things that will allow for us to see the voter turnout in our favor in those inner city communities. So we talked about doing a back to school drive,
Mhm.
which I did something similar to that back when I ran in 2022. So I just spoke about all kinds of things. So it's a party. If we were able to, if they wanted to sponsor something, we put their name on it, whatever. It was like $200 or whatever. That became problematic.
Mhm.
$200. So the frustration came back from those who were part of this meeting, where they were like, "We don't want to do it. We don't want to do it anymore because
Yeah.
you know it was so many strings attached to it to be able just to have something in the community to do." So
Yeah.
that was at that meeting, it was discussed about having committee. Pretty much every state party has a thing where they will basically give you like a stamp of approval to have a club under the umbrella.
Mhm.
You don't have to be members of the Republican Party to be part of it here in the state of Florida. So we said, well, why don't we start something that is like a Frederick Douglass Republican Committee?
Mhm.
We use that committee to get people to come in to hear about we are as a Republicans, what we can offer, and why we are the choice for their communities. And so we waited till this day for the paperwork, still waiting for the
Mhm.
paperwork to even get filed. So that's where you see when you read in my bio about the Frederick Douglass Republican Liberty Caucus.
Mhm.
I had sat on that idea. I went to the state chair for the state of Florida, who's Bob White. I said, Bob, I try to go the other route. I want to do something. I see the needs. I'm out in the community. I'm hearing people say they don't want to be attached to the Democrat Party, but they don't see representation in the Republican Party. What do we do? And Sure, started. And so we held our first meeting here in the Pine Hills, Orla Vista area.
Mhm.
We had some of the representatives come. We had, and it was allowed for us to do this as a entire statewide Frederick Douglass Republican Liberty Caucus, so that we're able to get out and start doing work in the inner city communities. So that's a long term plan. When I was in Oklahoma briefly, I started the Black Republicans Association. I partnered with a guy named Tom Culver, who said, Willie, this has to be full time. You cannot just go out there during election cycle and do it.
Right.
He wrote up a whole entire plan of how do we work off election cycles? How do we do this?
Mhm.
Surprisingly enough, as you said, it's not just Florida, it's not just,
Yeah.
Texas. This was in Oklahoma.
Mhm.
The number one thing comes back, well, we don't do things on off cycle. Well, that's the problem because
Yes.
guess who does? The Democrats. The
Yes.
Democrats work year around. I
Mhm.
never forget. I tell the story all the time. November election a couple of years back. It was November, whatever the date was. It was 2 weeks later before Thanksgiving, and guess what was happening? They were out doing Thanksgiving giveaways, I mean turkey giveaways,
Mhm.
and they were registering voters with
Mhm.
2 weeks after the general election. That's why their numbers in so many places like Orange County are almost double because they keep doing the work. They're at every function. You go to, we have a park here. You probably know this, Jason, Lake Eola Park.
Mhm.
People walk around this park. Guess what you're going to see? People registering voters at the park every single week. They are registering voters even in the off season. So this is why I think it's very important to have a plan, a strategy, but it cannot come from the fact that we don't have resources. I don't even ask the county for resources, but I asked them to give us equal opportunity that
Mhm.
every other club has, just like the women federated groups.
Mhm.
Let's have an equal opportunity. Let's have an equal voice. Let's not just shoot us down a 2 minute window and like, okay, it's unwell. And I heard this from people in the party leadership. I heard it
Mm.
from people who were working long campaign, and they kept saying that it's just not winnable. It's just not winnable. What bothered me with that is, and I have people who live in District 10 who said, Willie, with that type of thinking, who wants to be part of the Republican Party?
Correct.
Who wants to continue to show up to meetings where you think that it is not viable for someone that's Republican to win? Where I live here too, and I told the chair this. I live here. Are you telling me that I have to pack my bags and move to a red district because you don't deem this? I shouldn't have Republican representation based
Yeah.
off of the geographical location in which I live. That's not fair to me or the people who live in Bithlow or the people who live, in Winter Park. Who Winter Park is in our district. That's an affluential area. If you don't have Republican representation, well, those people in the businesses in those areas that suffer because of Democrat policies, they're looking at the Republican Party saying, "What are you going to do? What is your district is your commission is winnable. Your state representative is winnable, but the federal dollars that can really help with infrastructure, help with transportation, help with the school. When you have someone as radical as Maxwell Frost in
Mhm.
office who is not bringing those funds back to those areas that cover all areas from Pine Hills all the way to Winter Park,
Yeah.
that is what's bothersome to me. So.
Let's go. Let's step outside for a second, or back to the 30,000 foot view. Is this a Republican Party problem? Meaning, here's my question: to go into those communities to do that turkey drive the week after, 2 weeks after, to do those things, you know, is it beneficial to be party first or is it principle first? And I think we know the answer, but to begin making headways and building relationships, let's say you had the resources and the blessing and the whatever that you could go in there and begin doing these things. Is it a good idea to do it with the Republican hat with your lapel on with the elephant, or is it just a I care about this community first? Should is this the problem, or should it be fall in the lap of the responsibility of the Republican Party to do this?
So, Jason, I'm going to say this as bluntly as possible. I definitely believe that it is principle first.
Mhm.
The reason I put so much pressure on the Republican Party is because the Republican Party put pressures on us to register Republicans or register Democrats in Black communities to become Republicans.
Mhm.
You cannot do that if they don't put any time in, they don't show up, and there is no Black faces in the local GOP. And so when you talk about principle, it is policy, but oftentimes I'm so for words stern with the party because I feel like I dedicated basically my all of my teen life and now my adult life since age 14 of preaching to the community about the principles of the Republican Party.
Mm.
I've shown up, I've been there, I've been the faces of things. I've gotten the Uncle Toms, I've gotten the Cools, I've gotten called the names for being a black Republican in 2025, 21st century. So when I show up to the community, I want my party that I'm saying that I represent to not just send me as a face, but to show behind me, whether you're white, whether you're
Right.
Hispanic, that you're saying, Willie, we have your back. You don't have to come out with the pen. You don't have to come out with a Trump hat. You don't have to come out with nothing. Just show up, get behind us, and say, Willie, I'll hand out turkey dinners. But this is the response I get. Willie, is that going to get us voters? Is that going to make a difference?
Mm.
That's problematic when I hear that
Yeah.
because you have to. Kimberly Klacik said it best. Those that know Kim from Baltimore, walking the red
Hmm.
dress down the street, she said it best. She always says you have to chip away at it. And the
Yeah.
number one thing that I hear from the community, from in these inner city communities, is Willie, where are they?
Right.
You want me to be a Republican, but where are they? Where can I see that you can answer my questions? The first thing that they do is say, Willie, hand them this, basically handing them a brochure. Guys, that's not how it works.
Mm.
There has to be a strategy, a plan. When I was in Oklahoma, I had got uh, red folders, the two prongs, I mean, the folders
Yeah.
donated. I got 100 of those folders donated. I got a printing company to donate a package that had come out by Frances Rice. And those who don't know, she came up with the National Black Republicans Association, and she came out with a packet. And this packet had I mean, she's very thorough. She was in the military, so forth, so forth. So she came up with this packet. We printed the packet off. We put a business card that I created in there. We put a voter registration. And you know what we did? We treated this like it was called the Truth Campaign. And I took these red folders, I took this information. We went to Tulsa where the 1921 race riot took place. So it was full of all of that weight of that. So you had a lot of people who did not want to hear about nothing, nothing. So we went and we knocked doors. We handed out these brochures. I mean, these we rolled back around, and guess what? They were reading it. We interacted with them. They started asking questions. We had people say, listen, I've been a Republican 50 years. We had a guy that said, I never thought I would live to see this day. He came with his cane and all and showed up to the meeting and said, I had to live to see this. I wanted to show up to see this.
Mm.
That there is someone who has risen up that is carrying this message that I had to hide that I was a black Republican. That is the stories and the testimonies that are with inside of the inner cities that don't want to come out
Yeah.
because there's no representation. I'm one person, as you mentioned, Belinda BB. She's one person. There is literally when we go to these meetings, there's probably maybe 5 people who are black Republicans at this meeting. You go, we went to another, there were 54 evictions that took place within District 10. We went and showed up to this. There was no representation from the Democrats at all. It was all Republicans that I invited, black Republicans who showed up. And I said, you guys, this is what we're doing. We're here for you. So we invited a particular person. They showed up. The incentives was and they're like, "Whoa, why are you talking to us this way?" And I said, "See, this is the problem. You have to," and I love the strategy. You have to have a strategy of knowing how to talk. You can't just come out the woodwork. You got to show them that you're invested in the
Yes.
community. You are equally invested in what they're invested in. They're all inner city communities are not, wearing saggy pants and walking around with locks in their hair. They're not all uneducated. They're not all walking around wanting to be on welfare. They're just saying that this has happened to be where I live. I have kids. I have a job. I need to be able to afford baby formula. I need to be able to afford food on the table. I don't want higher taxes. I don't want someone coming in wanting my child, my daughter to be in the same bathroom with a man. So I literally had someone pull us over and say, y'all need to be talking about them transgenders out there ruining our kids and wanting to chop off their genitals. And
Right.
I'm like, whoa, I was shocked.
Yeah.
Agree with this. So anyway, my rant is over. But
Oh
I was
no.
saying that I really, really know that the community wants representation, that they just don't know that the Republican Party is the party that can really bring this. Because right now, it's the state legislature here in Florida, it's the supermajority. Democrats have no voice in that regard. Right now, we have the majority in Congress. That's my message. You guys, these Democrats can't really do anything for you anyway because we have the majority. Give the opportunity to us. Their response is, I would have no problem with that, but where are you? I mean, I only see you during election time. I only see you handing out flyers. You
Yes.
don't come to our events. You don't show up, and you don't. I've had people say, Willie, don't waste any money sending out anything to those particular areas because they're not going to vote for you. And that's not true. We don't know if we don't put any effort or what President Trump said this. What do you have to lose? What if you invested $100,000 into just marketing in inner cities? What if that does work? That's the question that is not answered to me. Is what if it actually does work?
Right.
And I don't think they're ready for that response. I think they're afraid to see people come in that may actually want to hold them accountable to say, okay, you got me in here. Now what? What do? So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Are there precinct committeemen in those districts and they are volunteering in those districts? Could we get
We
more? Or are there precinct committeemen that the couple months before the election, resource allocation, they go help somewhere else?
That's both. We have there's about 200 precinct committees that are absent. We don't have no committee man or committee woman, especially in these areas.
Mhm.
Is
So is that something you can do? Can you go recruit some people in those areas and to be committeemen and to represent the party and then begin to do these different things in there in that district,
I
as
I
opposed
would
to
love to.
expecting people from over here to come to your district? Can you recruit from within?
I would love to do that. I don't know. See, there's so many rules with the people coming into the
Mhm.
party. You have to come to 3 meetings before, or 2 or 3 meetings before you can get elected in. Well, that puts a lot of burden to come on because you got to sit through a meeting. Remind you start 6:30, 7 o'clock for 2 or 3 hours,
Right.
and then you have to be voted in. Now I'm gonna tell you what happened. This is why I'm saying that the reason why I'm going to the party, because some of these things have to change if we want people to come,
Mhm.
is I took some people who were not Republicans to a meeting. And this was right when we had got the new chair for the party. I took them to the meeting, and I can't remember the guy name that his name was Glenn Fletcher. Is it Fletcher? You know what I'm talking about, that writes the book about America and God. I think his name was Fletcher. And so he was doing a seminar, and it was talking about the truth of America, and he's talked about black communities and how we tie into this. And this was a Republican centered event. This lady said to me, she was like, "Wow, I didn't know this." She said, "This is truth. I need to get involved." So she went around, started talking to people, asking what they do and whatever. I get a phone call, Jason, the next morning, and the phone call was, "Willie, why did you invite her? Who is she? We seen her at the school board meeting. She's not for us. She's with that 1916 project. She's with this and I said, "Wait, whoa, 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 whoa." And so all of it is like, and the next thing was, people are here to be safe. They didn't feel safe with her there. What kind of response is that to give? And so how can I invite other people to join in the precinct committee when
Yeah.
everything is always speculative?
Yeah.
Well, really, are they really Republican? I mean, are you really a Republican? I mean,
Right. Right.
how do we know what's inside the heart of a person? If they want to give an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm just trying to search for like vehicles to do this because should the vehicle be a Republican led vehicle to get into the communities and build relationships, or, then that's why I went to the precinct committeemen. Should they be responsible? And that's hard to
They
recruit
should.
for. That's very hard to recruit for. That's not a first call close. You don't go meet some people in a community and say, hey, you want to be a precinct? A what? A piece? A what? I'm not politically correct. I got to go to a meeting, 3 meetings, and they do, Robert's Rules of Order, and I got to go sit there for. No, I just want to help my community. I just want to impact. So I'm looking for
Yeah.
vehicles. But you're absolutely. Let me read just my intro to this article real quick, and then we'll dig into some of this. So I wrote. I said, for far too long, Republican organizations have focused their energy on shoring up existing support in friendly territories, often leaving Democrat-leading communities untouched and uncontested. But if we're to ensure the long-term success of our principles and policies, it's time to rethink our strategy. Making inroads into these traditionally Democrat areas isn't just about flipping votes. That's the short term mindset that we've been talking about. It's about creating meaningful relationships, finding shared values, and addressing real concerns in ways that resonate. Here's a key line: this effort is not about quick fixes or transactional politics, because a lot of times, okay, go into that community, register people to vote, get voters. It's like, man, you got to have a long-term strategy. So what I wrote in here was basically, this is hard to read right here, but I said step 1, build relationships through community engagement. That just makes perfect sense, but they're not necessarily doing that. You talked about, the back to school stuff. We did that 20 some years ago. We did a backpack drive. We sat in front of the Office Depot and had a list, and we filled 50 backpacks, and I forget what school it was, but then we donated them to that school. And that was just
Right.
one little small thing. And yes, we had the Republican thing on the banner, but I remember hearing a story about some Democrat operation where it didn't have Democrat on it, but they posed as a new company, a new organization, and they went door to door and they signed people up. We will represent you to make sure that your landlord takes care of your house.
Mhm.
They almost kind of like unionized it. You know what I mean? They organize it like unions. And we'll make sure that you get what's owed to you with a cleaning and those whatever, and to make sure they repair that and this kind of stuff. And then when it came time the next year for the election, they made sure they were registered to vote, make sure they got all the information, and made sure that they showed up at the polls. It had nothing to do with
I mean,
Democrat on it.
that is a strategy that is used. I mean, if you look at some of the things that the Democrats do, that they're going to sit down and have a strategic plan because they want to win.
Yeah.
And that goes back to the simple thing. Do we want to win so that the community wins? That has to be the basis of it.
Yes.
Like, are we so secure in our policies and our principles that we want our communities to win off of them? And that is how the Democrats are. They are so secure that
Mhm.
everything that they believe in, no matter how brainwashed it is, that they are the party that can rectify all of these things and get things done the right way. So they create systems and they put people out there, and guess what? They pay them to be these
Yes.
spot people. These people, half these people have no clue. I'll sit up there and see them at the polling place, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm just out here. I just get paid $20 an hour." They don't know what the person believes or stand for. We've
Yeah.
had stories though of people going and talking to them at the polls and them dropping the signs and walking away and saying, "Oh, I don't believe in that." And they didn't know. They were just paid. They didn't even know what the person believed. I actually spoke to someone and told them about the amendments, and they were like, "This person believes in that?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Oh no, I'm not." And that's the scary part, that
Mhm.
people are blindly led astray by itching ears and dollars.
Right, absolutely, and the dollars to pay that $20 an hour person or that company, organization that went in and signed people up door to door to represent them to their landlord, I'm sure that that's not from some little local fundraiser of
No.
this and that with the party. Somebody had an idea, went up the chain and went up to the big donors, talked to them, said, "Hey, we got an idea to do something in Central Florida." They invested in that effort, and you know, planning the day after the election to affect the next election in 2 years, the fact that that's a long-term strategy, that's still the next election, but that's what they do. So back to number 1, build relationships through community engagement. Purpose I wrote in here is establish trust and visibility within these Democrat-leaning communities. And I've got a series of actions. One of them is attend local events such as neighborhood festivals, charity drives, school board meetings, and show authentic support for the community's needs. The key there is attending their events. And in transactional politics, what the party usually does is invite them to our events. And it's like you should have a presence at their events to begin planting those seeds and those relationships. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and I've told them that before. I mean, it's, and again, the feedback I get is, are we going to be accepted? I'm like, guys, this is not. What year do you think this?
Mm.
Like, we're like, are you going to be accepted? I'm like, yeah. I mean, there are white Democrats, so it's not.
Yeah.
I just think that, and sometimes I think that those things are excuses because you're used to being comfortable, and this part of this, what you are reading here, is a strategy that is going to have to come out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
You just cannot be comfortable doing it your way. We can't. It can't be comfortable showing up to our type of dinners or being around people that all say the same thing. That actually should be more concerning to us, that we are always at the events where we're always hearing the same thing to each other.
Yes.
And not somewhere where someone, maybe they do give you a challenge, not a challenge because they don't agree, but they do actually want to know,
Mhm.
well, what is different about you, and how do I know that you're really, not going to do like we've been done before. And so
Mhm.
I think absolutely, Jason, they need to show to other events, and I love it. I love to go places. I mean, for example, there's this new trend, especially here in Florida, called kava bars, right? And I started going to these kava bars. They're good alternatives for people who want to get away from alcohol, want to get away from, they were on drugs, so they can go here. And it's a good young adult area. So I started going last year. Didn't think about it, had no clue, not thinking anything political. Just went. So people started learning that I was in politics. So what I did is I created two different uh, little flyers. One flyer that I used to go to the community. The other flyer had a different type of picture that I had on it from some time ago. And it was all like, more youthy Gen Z. I took that, left that there, just had a QR code on it, and I started just handing out around it. So people was like, wait a minute. It's like, Willie, you're in politics, but yeah, there's like a politician sitting in here among us. Now, mind you, I go around, talk to all these people. Now, mind you, you got some of them that are, the emo style, their nails are painted black, their hair is different colors are going. So I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go over. Well, I talked to all of them. It was every single one of them had conservative values.
Mhm.
And I believe that's what helped me win in the primary, because
Yeah.
most of them were not registered to vote. They didn't know there was a primary. They was not involved in the vote. But they believed what we believe, but no one had went out and took it. So I started going every single day, and I started handing out till we got people activated, registered. We had a guy that said, I haven't in all my life been registered to vote. And he was in his 30s. And he's like, I had never registered to vote, never voted. You will be the first person I've ever voted for. Uh, the
Wow.
lady, I met this guy, his mother, she said for 50 years she's voted Democrat. And she said, after me hearing and looking up Willie, this will be my first time voting for a Republican. And so it was because I showed up to places that do not look like it is Republican friendly. Bring my opinion, bring it, and to find out that these people believe the same way we believe. They want something different, and the only reason they haven't been attached to the party is because they don't want to go to things like that. They don't want to have to put on a suit and a tie. They want to be able to say, "Hey,
Yes.
come meet me at the skate park." Come meet me somewhere and have a conversation with me in my zone. So I agree with you. We should come to them more than they should come to us.
Yes. Let me throw some numbers at you because this is, 20 some years ago in Orange County, going to the Lincoln Day dinner. There's probably 300 people there at the Lincoln Day dinner. Back then, there was 900,000 was the population of Orange County. And 300 people at your Lincoln Day dinner, maybe they had 100, 150 precinct chairs, something like that. When I went to go visit a little over a year ago, talked to them as after the Lincoln Day dinner, and the population is not 900,000. Now it's 1.4 million. So obviously it's grown. They still had 300 people at your Lincoln Day dinner in Orange County, and there's still probably 100, 150 precinct chairs. So the party's not growing in Orange County. I looked at the voter registration. I'm going to ballpark these, just round them for the sake of this conversation. 750,000 people registered to vote, 200,000 Republicans, 200,000 Republicans, 320,000 Democrats. And so when you ask most party, what's your strategy? What's your mission? Get Republicans elected. How do you do it? Make sure Republicans show up to vote or register people as Republicans. If you get 100% voter turnout with Republicans, that's 200,000. That's still 60% of Democrats. Now that 200,000 Republican number, there was 240,000 NPAs. There's more people in the middle not affiliated with any party than there are Republicans. And those people you just talked about, not even registered to vote. So
Yeah.
what is the strategy to reach them, to reach out beyond the Republican Party itself, to get the independents?
Right. People made fun of Harris and different ones, even Frost, because they had concerts and stuff.
Mhm.
I even had got some flack back in 2020, 2022, because I knew what would draw people out. That's what it was. It was having things that were interactive and fun, and it wasn't all centered around dinner. I mean, I literally put together. They call it a cover crawl, so it's almost similar to a bar crawl. You go hopping, but you go to these different cover places, and I just put it around like, hey, let's just go around. Anything that is interactive where there are people, because there are a lot of people in between or not registered who simply just need to be drawn out to what they like. Even
Yeah.
if we put together a concert, what would it hurt to have a nice, clean family concert? I hosted a movie night when the Reagan movie came out. We had people that don't normally get out. So they came out, people I hadn't seen in years because they don't associate with the party. They have no clue what the party's doing. But they didn't mind coming to the party, and it was $8. I'm like, come to the thing. We had, and everybody was like, I love this. We're that. So things like that, having movie nights, not sitting there making it crap and have I just feel like the party gets away from that because they feel like they're like, we're not trailing behind or doing things that the Democrats do, but if it works, my God, it works. So
Right.
I tell people, do it better. If they have a concert with whatever Beyonce, okay, well, let's get out there and get Dolly Parton. Let's let you we do it better, and have more people show up and show them interest. When we did our turkey giveaway, the key to that was we didn't just give them the turkey. That was the open door. We had school supplies, we had clothes. They had to learn about conservative principles before I gave them anything. So
Mhm.
we were teaching, we had 14 people who became Republicans
Mm.
in that setting.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, wow, like people want to hear. So no, we're not saying give them a turkey and send them on their way and hope they vote Republican. We made sure that there was an attachment to this is what we stand for. Republicans are not against people who need something every now and then.
Mhm.
We're not against because that's the perception of it. And so anyway, I would say that the plan to that is we can have fun. We don't want to be known as a, a group of people who are stuffed up all the time. I know we
Right.
have a lot of older people, but they have a lot of older people too. So, they still do, they didn't do it. You'll see the older people getting out there dancing and having fun because at the end of the day, we have one life to live, and it can't be all wound up in the fact that we're here just to be, these political people to get into the office. Because a lot of these people who are like that, they get in office, they end up being the doom of the party.
Yeah.
So we want to we need to have some fun along the way.
Yeah. So in step two, I listed identify and leverage shared values. That's kind of what you're talking about here. In my trainings, I do. Jesus said, "Be fishers of men." I say, for this purpose, let's be fishers of patriots, where I cast a net into the community and find out who actually really believes the things that we do. And then what I always say is invite them to something fun. It's not that you're at the grocery store and you're like, boy, what was the price of orange juice a year ago? Do you remember that? And the one guy rolls his eyes, but the lady's like, "Yeah, Bidenomics." You're like, "Okay, that's a lead." Now you talk to her, and then you invite her to something fun. "Hey, this Saturday we're showing the Kash Patel Government Gangsters movie at the headquarters. You want to come meet a bunch of people, have some pizza, and you invite them to something fun. It's not, hey, do you want to come to our monthly meeting where we do Robert's Rules of Orders and parliamentary procedure, and we gotta, you know, so yeah, so it's identify and leverage shared values. What I wrote here is find common ground that transcends party labels. Now, when you say the Democrats, this is what I kind of knocked them a bit because they're doing concerts, Beyonce and whatever, and there is no principle in the conversation. You're attracting people because of that in hopes that they're gonna what? Like you now? But I like what you're talking about with the turkeys and all that. I remember 2004, we had the 3 hurricanes that went through Central Florida, and I was out volunteering. They had the big trucks passing out ice, and I had my Republican Party of Florida hat on. I think Jeb Bush was the governor then or something. I just, it's so we did kinda get a little political when we were handing out the ice and all that, but, identify and leverage shared values. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that we have to identify what the shared values are and have that conversation and ask. I mean, even if we, as I told you, what would it hurt to invest and get some of these investors out to invest? Maybe just like we do when you send out information and $5,000 to $10,000 for these polls. Why don't we do the same thing in these communities where we send out surveys? Where we ask people, what is your concern? As you mentioned earlier about you, we don't have to attach anything to it that says Republican at all.
Mhm.
It's just a simple community survey. Please let me know, how do you feel about these areas and what we could do better. And
Yes.
then we get that feedback back and say, this is what everybody's saying. Of course, everybody's gonna say the economy because that was the number one thing we was running off of.
Mhm.
The economy, and then what? It's like, okay, it's easy to say the economy when people say, what is the number one thing today? Economy. Okay, next question. But we don't really go into, well, how is the economy impacting you as where you live? Because the
Right.
economy for me and the economy for someone down the street may be two different ways is impacting us, but may not impact us the same. And
Mhm.
so that's where these surveys can help us. And I wish we did have an investment. Maybe someone out there listening. Maybe we do have an investor that can say, I'll pay for a survey because those things help. Once you get the data to all these voters, especially in this, quote unquote, as you said, this off season, if we can
Mm.
get the data, that's the thing that we can use. We'll be able to say, okay, now we know what to do come, when it warms back up. Now we can know we can get people out and start talking to them based off of the information we receive.
Yeah. Here locally, there's what they call it the consolidated elections. That's like the local elections.
Right.
That's April 1 here locally, or actually all throughout the state. And it's every school board, it's every library district, and even like the town mayor's race and stuff like that. That's going on April 1. And 2 years ago, the off year, but 2 years ago, the turnout was less than 15%. Pathetic. So my big push with these folks here is about recruitment of volunteers for that last 4, 5, 6 weeks push. You get 3,000 more votes here and the whole county's red. I mean, that's so I was actually doing last Friday a training with some precinct committeemen and women in a county in Texas because they have a big election or a big local election in November. And for them, it's nonpartisan. There's no party affiliation, so it's extra confusing for the population. And so we talked about different ideas of doing things in the run up to that election, of doing these exact same things that we're talking about, which is the surveys, getting familiar with what really is important to these folks. Um, Number 3, recruit local ambassadors. That's getting people in the community of the community, recruiting them to then help with this effort. But again, as you said, hopefully someone's listening that can say, "Hey, this would be a great investment for the party, for our principles, for our country, for those communities to begin to impact them over the long term." And long term meaning multiple years. Doesn't have to be a 20-year plan. It can be just over the next few years. And hopefully somebody says, "Hey, let's go do that." But what do you think about the recruiting local
Absolutely.
ambassadors?
We need local ambassadors to the plan. I mean, like I said, the guy that helped me, he was mentoring me. We came up with that plan. It was a long term. I still have it. I mean, if you actually read it, you'll see that even though that was years ago, that was 2010, and the information is still relevant today. I mean, it's still a plan that can be used, and so I think that we do have to have ambassadors, and it's interesting you said because if you look at how the Democrats do, they send out people that are so happy to put on any shirt, whether it's not branded Republican or not. They put on these T-shirts, they put on the hats. They're representatives of. So even creating an organization, I created the Frederick Douglass take off the Republican side to it. And just the Frederick Douglass Center, everything I centered around Frederick Douglass because anyone on any side can relate to Frederick Douglass.
Mhm.
And so creating these organizations where people go out, like I have gotten a lot of people, even from the Democrats, where I said, I am a Frederick Douglass Republican. Those are the
Mhm.
shirts that
Mhm.
and I've had people saying, "Listen, I'm a Democrat, but if you're that type of Republican, I can get with that. That's
Wow.
my type of Republican."
Yeah.
So I know it works. I know that people are like, okay, now that's a different type of Republican. Now tell me about that because that's a. And I walked around Lake Eola and people said, "Now I can get with that Republican."
Mhm.
And so I know that this. I believe this is the strategy that I've gotten is to take that and to brand Frederick Douglass ambassadors that can go out and they represent. They go into their community, their
Yep.
precincts. They go in their communities. They go and they're out there saying, "Listen, um, I'm a Frederick Douglass Republican, and this is what we stand for." Yeah, I can get with that. Okay, well, we need to invite you to come out because we're doing this gathering out here, and we want to hear from you. And that's how. So that goes back to what we said earlier in this conversation. That was where we was needing the resource and support for because we have the strategy.
Mhm.
We also need the support, well, because you don't have people going to give money just to because we're not part of main part of the party, so we're not going to get it. So I think, getting true ambassadors, as you mentioned, is very important. People that can carry the message
Mhm.
everywhere they go is what it is. You see people brand themselves all the time. They go out and be like, I see t-shirts and be like, hey, I like that. They're like, yeah, this is what I do. This is what I stand for. Even one time I had t-shirts that had a QR code. It just says scan me. So when they scanned it, now this was back then when it was, I forgot what it was about. This was 2020. And when they scanned it, I think it was during the whole COVID stuff. When they scanned walk it, it just popped with the Constitution. And so,
Love it.
anything like that, people see the scamming by nature. You don't know who's behind you scanning it, so they'd be like, "Let me scan." So they'll scan it, and it can pop up like whatever. I created a website called um, Our Black Future. This was done during with the amendments because I wanted something that did not point directly to Amendment 4 and get people all stirred up, but it would still point to the same thing. So we developed a whole thing around it, but didn't get really much money behind it to get it as it could have been. Cause we thank God it didn't go through. But I said it. I said once we finish with the election, I'm going to use that website, Our Black Future, and that's going to be because that that will brand T-shirt that had on the front of it, the front of it, it had Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, it had Simone Biles, it had all those figures there. So people looking like, oh yeah, this is our future.
Mhm.
And but when they scanned it, it pointed to everything that's involves the Republican Party.
Mhm.
It was just to grab them to get it. But I said the messaging that we had, it was all about the Frederick Douglass, all about how you can cultivate change. And I think sometimes things like that, because it's easier to win with honey than it is with me. And we
Mhm.
know that.
Tell me about the strategy of trying to register voters. I've seen such a focus on going to these communities, setting up a table somewhere, and make sure you register people as Republicans. And in Florida, it's a closed primary, meaning you can only vote in the primary if you are registered by party. I
So
I've often kind of hesitated in that if somebody's a brand spanking new, do you want them? Are they going to be? Are they really going to vote correctly for the most, whatever you want to say, conservative? I hate the term, but in the primary process. And do you think that there's a party establishment hesitation to register new voters because they don't want them messing up the primary?
right. I think
Maybe I'm
there
trying to
is
read too much into it. I'm sorry, but
I think there is a hesitation with that. Mm. We even see that within some of the clubs where, at the last minute, they stop the flow of membership because they're afraid that a new influx of members are going to get out the form. Right. So I agree with that. So what we did is in Florida, they allow you to get a third party voter registration number.
Mhm.
Allows for organizations to register voters, not just the party.
Mhm.
And that's when I created the Frederick Douglass Pact and registered to get it takes about 6 months. But to register to get the number so that when we go out to register voters, it's not attached to anything that says because they can ask, And that's when you see people say, hey, I'm with the Urban League, and people say, oh, okay, what's the Urban? So when I come out and say, hey, I'm with the Frederick Douglass Pack, what is the Frederick Douglass Pack? What we're doing. And so again, when we can't coax them into what to vote for when you do, but you can give them information.
Mhm.
And I think that there is some, hesitancy there with, what are they going to do during the primary? But I think that we had do our due diligence to educate on the primary as part of this registration, this registering the voters. I think because all you do is see register to vote. We got to get them to register to vote, and then they're so confused when they get that. Because I had a young man said my dad had to walk me through. He said I saw your name up there. We had to go do research. There's not enough information out there. They don't put enough focus so people can really understand the process. And with it being such a late primary, it's
Right.
just not enough. And I know the whole thing is the resources, the resources, the resources. Well, we have to find a state, a county, a district that has done it in a large capacity that it worked. And we need to just do what they do. We can't keep saying that we don't have resources. We can't just keep saying that we want to register voters and that they have no clue the primary because people get registered voters and they also don't vote during the primary because they don't know that there's such thing as a primary. When I was running, they was like, okay, Willie, okay, I remember November, and I was like, no. I said, there is no November if I don't have in August. So,
Right.
and they was like, what? I was like, yeah. So I literally put all of August on my campaign materials. Some people said, don't do that. You use, I was like, if you don't tell them when, most people are too busy. People are not staring at a computer waiting for August 18th to come out and vote. So
Mhm.
I literally spent all my time just getting it into people's head. August, August, August. So people was texting me and saying the days of like they had already gotten like they were ready to go. And now those people will now be aware that there are primary elections in August and to look out for those elections. So I think we have to do better at educating and keeping people abreast. Because once you register to vote, you lose contact. We don't keep those contacts of those voters. Like they register to vote, we turn it into the supervisor of election. They don't give us like a list of their names. We can't. I mean, we don't get it from there. So there has to be something that goes along with it, so we can follow back up and say, "Hey, we turned in your information. We would love to invite you out to some coffee, some light lunch or dinner, so that we can, explain to you the whole voting process, and so you can, be active. We want you not to just be a voter, but an active voter. So I
Mhm.
think that's the next thing to do. And I don't see that. I don't see voter registration parties where people like, hey, everybody that voted to register, hand them, here's a voter registration, you filled it out, did an exchange like you mentioned, here you go. This is your free ticket to come get a free dinner for
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
Bring a friend. So there you go. Even if the friend's not there, now that's an opportunity to possibly get another person to register to vote.
Mhm.
So here it is. I'm giving y'all some ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. I talked to some folks and I said, you should do like an AR-15 raffle, and if
Okay.
you, and every single time you volunteer, you get 5 more entries. So that, but anyways, so there's a lot of different ideas there. I know you have to run in a few minutes. Step 4, I've got sustain engagement with grassroots programs. Hosting non-political. We talked about a lot of this. Hosting non-political events such as workshops, financial literacy, resume building, home ownership. So they're like non-political events to bring people in to educate them.
Right.
But but any thoughts on that?
They
I'm
don't
gonna
all
close.
have
I
to
know you got
be
to run, but
you're
yes, sir. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
okay. I mean, Jason, you're right on that non-political, and that's why I said like, we had an event one time and someone came and I was like, hey, this is not really, we're not gonna focus on, it was a concert, it was go and sure enough, you get people because they want to, and you don't know the saying now, read the room. They didn't read the room because you didn't know where everybody was. It was just it wasn't put on by political people, yes. So they get up and they start talking about Trump and about Biden and all this stuff and all. And I'm like, man, we're gonna lose a lot of people because you have to first, like, what's the point of having vendors if all that you're going to focus on is use the vendors to get the information out? You just get up and you speak truth. Speaking truth doesn't have to include a party. You can just speak truth about, hey, I live here. I'm not I live in this community. I do this, and this is the issue that I'm seeing. What about you? And leave the party part off, especially when it's non-political. And then just continue to go forth. But I think that we need to definitely share this. I'm going to send definitely your article off to some of the leadership if you haven't already. Yeah, I hope that they actually read.
So as just as a close, key principles I wrote in here: consistency, empathy, and patience.
Yes,
I mean, it's got to be a long-term strategy to try to make those impacts.
that's all it's about. Yeah, and it starts today, Jason. When November was over, I told everybody take a week and we should be back out carrying these principles, getting out there and starting something. We can't wait. I see people file to run and um, you know, already for 2026, but there still is no strategy. These are the people that are filing are running for districts that, it would be almost impossible for a Republican to lose. And
Mm,
I'm like, what did we not learn? What
right.
what happened between November and January? What did we not learn about it? It's amazing how people retract back to the same mindset. And and that's what bothers me when I notice here. I've lived in other places. I'm born and raised in North Carolina. It was not like this. I went to Oklahoma. They caught on. It was not like that. When I first moved here to Florida, it was even not like that. So over the last, I want to say, 5 years since this last 2020 election time,
Mhm.
that's when I noticed the big difference. And it's like people are in this cycle, and I just hope they can get out of it.
One thing I talked about with the local folks after the election, like the week after, I said, okay, because I would venture to guess, tell me if you think this is accurate, 95%, let's say, of Republicans in a district that's typically a D plus or whatever. But well, even as a whole, 95% of Republicans literally have no idea that that local GOP club exists.
You're right.
And anytime anybody hears from them, they're always asking for something. So my suggestion was, I said, let's get the list of the diehard Republicans because here it's an open primary, so nobody really registers by party, but you can tell who's got the history of voting in Republican primaries. Let's start to call them and let's do a listening session. Hey, we just had the election where the local GOP. What do you think of the election? And just listen, 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 listen. Hey, this is great. I just want to introduce myself, but I want to invite you to the Christmas party. Invite them to something fun and begin that process immediately. And then invite them. We're doing an inauguration watch party next week.
Right.
And then do a Super Bowl Patriot party, Patriot night at the local pub or something like that. And just always invite people to something fun and recruit them that way as an ongoing.
I said, listen, I agree.
Yeah, love it.
It's like,
Willie, I know you got to run. I appreciate you so much. Let's continue the conversation. We'll talk again about gerrymandering in the districts. And it's 2025, a few more years. They're going to be talking about it. It's going to affect us again in 2030, because I think that's a big factor that's going to affect these different districts that they just write off.
oh yeah. Well, we definitely got to come. You let me know. This will be good.
I knew I was going to plant that seed at the end, but that's awesome. Well, God bless you, Willie. Thank you for joining me
God
today.
bless you. Thank you.
You bet.